Hi everyone, I'm Catherine, the artist behind Bigelow Fine Arts. Welcome to a special video showing how I planned out the colors for the current spring spread I am working on. I'm not sure where I will post this, but if you like this little bonus video, let me know and I might be able to work more of them in. I do have a couple more waiting in the wings that I wasn't sure when to post. I might put them up on Patreon for now and see how the interest is for more like these. I'm using the tiny picture in the back of the Enchanted Forest coloring book to plan out my colors. This is a really tiny picture, and not very conducive to adding tons of layers or even more than one color, so I'm keeping things really simple and testing out a few of the larger ideas I have for this page. I already blocked in the pink flowers in the tree before I even thought to pull out the camera. When I first got the book, I went through and drooled over all the beautiful pictures and wondered how I was going to color them up. And this poor book languished for years in the bottom of a drawer while I moved on to other things. I finally decided enough was enough and I pulled it out. My original plan, which I still like, was to have the book chronicle an adventure over space and time. The compass gives an indication of some of the passage of time. And here, on the first real page of the adventure, I am beginning the adventure on an early spring morning with the sun just beginning to break through the trees and light things up. When someone says spring to me, there are certain assumptions I make. New leaves, bright green buds, fresh grass, flowers, new growth. That's just the sights. We're not even talking about the sounds or the smells or any of the other things. And so this tree that I started coloring pink reminded me of a magnolia or a tulip tree. I gave the flowers a lighter pink, but I think I might go a little darker on the main page. I test out a few colors on the side, and since I am using a magnifying craft light, I even test out a few layers on one or two of the larger leaves on the trees. I will be working up both sides of the spread in a similar fashion, but not completely identical. Nature has variation, and I'm not going to perfectly match each side, even if I could. I block in a trunk next as I am trying to find colors that will work without having all the trunks look the same. I use a lighter brown on one set of trees and a darker brown on the magnolia tree. I can't remember what color the trunk of a magnolia tree is, and while curious, I wasn't inclined enough to go look for it either. This is a fantasy world, and I am going on an adventure. Nothing has to be grounded in reality at all, and any color I put down on this tiny little test image may change when I get to the actual page. There are many factors that can make that change that I won't anticipate when testing things up with this test image. But this will give me an idea of colors that work together, and if the idea I have in my head will look good at all, or if I need to add something more. Since I am thinking spring for this page, it only seems right that I have some of the leaves worked up in a bright spring green. One reason why some of the colors might change is that they might not work so well once I have the background in place, and this little test swatch might help me see that a little bit better. I can then change color choices a little to work them better with the background, or I can change the background to work better with the choices I've made. For the leafy growth down near ground level, I opted for darker colors. Many things that grow under a canopy seem to have darker leaves. I'm thinking of things like rhododendron and mountain laurel, but maybe I'm misremembering these plants. And that is what I had in mind when I colored up the leaves under the canopy, something darker, and with more yellow or blue in the green. The grass, I just left that as grass, because why not? Mushrooms for me look great when they are a nice bright red. I know they come in other colors, but I like the bright punch the red gives to the page, and since the mushrooms are centered, I don't have to worry about balancing out a bright blob of red. They also go well with the bright pinks in the magnolia tree. I tested out a couple of reds off to the side as I wasn't sure which one I liked best, and I wasn't completely liking the one I chose initially. I felt it was a little too dark, so I quickly tested up a couple other reds and I picked one I liked better. I could have done this when working on the main page. I would have either had one mushroom a slightly different color, or I would have just gone over it with more layers of the red I preferred more. Since I normally use light layers, an off color wouldn't have been that bad. Here I am using a little more pressure just to get coverage since this isn't my final page. The space is really tiny, and I'm just testing colors and palettes. It looks like I am jumping around a lot, going from leaves to trunks to mushrooms and now onto vines. I am, and it is because, as I come up with an idea for something, I test it out. I didn't have anything planned out for this page other than making that one tree look like a magnolia. This vine reminds me of two things. Firstly, the kudzu that grows rampant in the southeast of the U.S., an invasive and unpleasant plant, but that is what I thought of when I saw this vine. The second thing it reminded me of was the monstera plant with the holes in the leaves, so I am thinking of leaving the holes in the leaves open to the background. I tested it up with a green that I had a touch of blue in it. I think this might even be the same green I used for the fern on the first page. I also tested the same color out on some of the leaves growing along the ground, and wasn't sold on the color there, so I came in with the olive color and I found I liked it much better. The trees on the sides of the spread have a lot of small squares on the trunk that I immediately thought could be lichen. Don't ask me why. I'm not even sure lichen grows on living trees, but I went with it. I chose a yellow gold for the lichen and I gave it a fill. There is no reason not to try anything my heart desires here because it's a test page. I also have 2 halves to test on. If something doesn't look quite right on one side, I'll just try something different on the other side. I test out some colors for the mushroom stems and give the stag some color as well. I opt for what I feel are normal stag colors, although I might have to figure out what color antlers actually are. I know they're light, but light what? Light brown? Light beige? Also, if I am considering this to be spring, wouldn't the deer have lost its antlers by now? I guess if it is early enough in the spring, they might still have them. I give the stag a little color, and I also give the mouse and owl similar colors. Isn't it a little strange that the mouse is running towards the owl? Is this a page from Nim? Is that Mrs. Frisbee? Does anyone even get that reference? Now that I have a little more color down, I am looking at the magnolia again. I only worked up the 3-lobed leaves as flowers, but I left the single leaves alone as I assumed I was going to make them leaves. The more I thought about it, the more I decided to just work them up as flower buds and let the whole tree be shades of pinks and magentas. I went light on the buds, which might be too light. Again, this is a test page for me to check out how things look, and if they aren't showing up just right, I can fix that on the main page. I decided to work up some of the background. Since my idea is that this is early in the morning, I think I want to work up a gradient with the sky darkest on the left side of the page and going to a brighter blue on the right side to make it look like the sun is rising. I do want the sun to be low in the sky. I start with a dark blue and work up a swath of sky. It is rough and there is no way I can work it around all the tiny details. I am just putting a swath across the open areas of the picture to get an idea of what it will look like. I work up several large bands of color across the sky going from dark to light. When I get to the end, I realized that I wasn't sure the left part of the sky was dark enough, so I found an even darker blue to add in and felt that looked better. But the drawback to that is that the darker blue doesn't quite work as well with the gradient, so I'm going to have to work a little more to make sure I blend them together really well. I might have another more appropriate color and I can check since I have the option of changing things around. I tested out the light green on the tree above and I wasn't sure about it. It would have been a lot of light green all along the top, so I moved away from the canopy and focused on the little trees underneath. I wanted to get a dark green leaf with some red on it. I tested out a couple of shades of purple reds, but I wasn't liking them. I erased them back a little just so they wouldn't be a distraction and tried using green and red together. And that was also a big nope for me as well. I worked up a few leaves with green and tried more purple red on top and still wasn't feeling it. So I went with just a straight green and felt it worked better. I'm sure one day I will figure out how to make leaves that look like they have just opened up with that tiny hint of red in them. And still at a bit of a loss for the canopy, I just decided to block in the leaves all the same light green, figuring at least it would give me a starting point. But I must have come in with a heavier hand as they looked darker, and they looked better that way. So maybe a medium green would work just fine here. I block in the trunks with a light brown, and I am left wondering what to do with all the texture drawn into the trunks of these 2 large central trees. I could just color it all up in brown and ignore the texture, but that seems such a waste. I quickly look up a few pictures of a tree that came to mind to see if it might work, and after seeing a few reference pictures, I decided to give the texture some interesting colors. Can you tell what tree I was thinking of? Let me know below what you think it might be, and when I get to it in the main image, I'll let you know. There are a few things left to figure out, and I'm not too concerned about them. I block in the space under the tree roots, but I'm not sure what I'll do with them. I'm not sold on the gray I put underneath. I know I have time to figure it out, so I'm not worried. But that is pretty much it for this little tester page, which means I can now move on to the main page and put my choices onto paper and see how it really looks. Thanks for watching. Let me know below or on social media if you liked this bonus content. I'd love to know what you think. I'm on MeWe and would love to build a coloring community there with everyone to share art, talk art, and discuss supplies. Patreon has a short write-up as well as all the palettes I am using and a list of the timestamps. It's available for everyone. If you have any questions or page requests, please leave them below or reach out to me on social media. I put in a list of chapter breaks in the show notes, as well as a list of equipment I like to use. If you use any of the affiliate links, it really helps me out without costing you a thing. I want to thank you all so much for coming along and joining in with me on this coloring journey. I appreciate all my subscribers and look forward to more of you joining in and coloring along with me. Please like, share, and subscribe to help that happen. Until next time, happy coloring!